He speaks and mountains crumble into dust. His breath splits seas apart, leaving the ocean floor bare before crashing back with the force of 1,000 storms. His anger burns hotter than the desert sun, turning cities into ash and drowning the world beneath black, endless waters. Thunder is his war drum. Lightning is the edge of his sword. This is a god of the ancient world, a warlord cloaked in cloud and fire, a judge whose verdict meant the death of nations, a presence so lethal that to look upon him was to die. This is Yahweh, and he is absolutely terrifying. If you too have breath that splits seas apart, then check out Pantheon Apparel, our clothing brand inspired by myths, legends and folklore. We ship worldwide and are rated excellent on Trustpilot. Link in the description. The story begins in deserts and highlands of the ancient Near East, a fractured land of city-states, tribal alliances and blood-soaked borders. Every kingdom had its own gods, stormbringers, harvest-givers, warlords of the sky and guardians of the underworld. These gods didn't demand exclusive loyalty. Power was shared, negotiated, traded like grain or gold between temples and thrones. But Yahweh wasn't a god who negotiated. He didn't ask to be worshipped. He demanded it. "You shall have no other gods before me" was a commandment as much as it was a declaration of war against the entire structure of the ancient world, against the very idea that power could be divided. His rise begins in Egypt, the most powerful empire of its time. His people were enslaved, beaten into brickmakers, their names forgotten, their children discarded. And then he answers with plagues. The Nile turns to blood, frogs pour into houses, boils erupt on skin, hail falls with fire inside it, locusts eat everything green, and then comes the darkness, thick, suffocating, absolute. These are dismantlings. Each plague is a calculated strike against the god of Egypt, and one by one, the empire's gods fell silent. When Pharaoh finally lets the Israelites go, it's surrender, but Yahweh isn't finished. At the edge of the Red Sea, with Pharaoh's army closing in, he splits the waters in two, a display of raw force. His people walk through the walls of water, the oceans held back by will alone. And when the Egyptian army follows, the sea collapses. Men scream, horses are dragged under, chariots vanish. The might of Egypt is drowned, and that is the moment everything changes. Yahweh is no longer the God of a small enslaved people. He is the God who broke an empire, who moved the sea, who fought the gods of Egypt, and won. When Israel stepped out of the sea, Yahweh was now their commander. The Exodus was a new beginning, a campaign, a march through the wilderness with a God who led them as a warrior. By day, he moved before them in a pillar of cloud. By night, a pillar of fire. His presence lit the path ahead and shadowed it at the same time, a constant reminder that the God who shattered Egypt now marched with his people. And when they went to war, the numbers or weapons mattered not, because the outcome had already been decided. His commands in battle were absolute. When a city was placed under harem, the ban, conquer wasn't the objective. It was erasure. No survivors or spoils, nothing left to reclaim. At Jericho, the Israelites encircled the city in silence for 6 days, the Ark of the Covenant leading the procession. On the 7th day, they marched 7 times. Trumpets sounded, the walls fell. And what followed was annihilation. Every man, woman, child, and animal inside was slaughtered. This was obedience. At the heart of that obedience was the before-mentioned ark, a chest made of acacia wood overlaid with gold, guarded by 2 golden cherubim, terrifying winged guardians with outstretched wings and faces hidden from view. It was a throne, the seat of Yahweh's presence, and on the battlefield, a declaration that the God of Israel wasn't watching from afar. He was here. When the Philistines captured the ark, their victory lasted only long enough for their god Dagon to be found face down in his own temple, shattered in pieces. The plague followed: tumours, panic, cities cursed one after the other until the ark was sent back with offerings, like a stolen relic returned to a vengeful king. Even touching the ark was forbidden. During a procession, the oxen pulling the cart stumbled. A man named Uzzah reached out his hand to steady it. Just a reflex, but the moment his skin made contact, he fell dead. His only mistake was proximity. The lesson was clear. The presence of Yahweh was lethal. To carry the ark into battle was to unleash something unstoppable, something that ended the fight before it began. In Yahweh's hands, the sky becomes a weapon. Thunder moves when he speaks, lightning strikes like arrows loosed from the heavens. Hail falls in sheets that flatten fields and crush the living. The sky is part of the assault. This is the same power that once shattered Egypt. Fire in the hail, darkness swallowing the sun, water turned against those who depended on it. After the Israelites escaped Egypt, Yahweh led them into the wilderness and brought them to the foot of Mount Sinai. This was where he would establish a covenant and would give them his laws, beginning with the 10 Commandments that would define their relationship with him. They were told to prepare, to purify themselves, to keep back from the mountain or die. For 3 days they waited, and on the morning of the 3rd, Yahweh descended. The mountain shook. Fire consumed the summit, smoke rose like a furnace, thunder cracked again and again until the earth itself trembled. Lightning split the sky, and then a sound, a trumpet, rose louder and louder until it drowned out everything else. Yahweh spoke the commandments out loud to every man, woman, and child gathered at the base of the mountain. And the people broke. They begged for it to stop. They pleaded with Moses to go up and speak with God in their place. They believed that if Yahweh kept speaking, it would kill them. From that point forward, Moses became their intermediary. He climbed the mountain, entered the smoke, and received the full law, carved it in stone by the hand of the God they were too afraid to hear. At Gibeon, as Israel battles its enemies, hailstones began to fall with deadly precision, striking so violently that more men die from the sky than from the blade. In the book of Samuel, where the Philistines gather for war, thunder rolls across the battlefield before a single weapon is drawn. It tears through their ranks like a scream from the heavens. Their formation collapses, panic spreads. The battle is over before it begins. And when Elijah stands on Mount Carmel, after years of drought, he calls upon Yahweh for fire and later for rain. The sky answers. Clouds gather, winds rise. A storm races across the sea, and the sky turns black. In the ancient world, storms were feared because they were unpredictable, but in Yahweh's hands, they were deliberate. There's no courtroom, jury, or defense. When Yahweh passes judgment, it's simply carried out. Sodom and Gomorrah were cities said to be consumed by cruelty, exploitation, and the powerful preying on the weak. But the punishment doesn't fall on the handful of guilty men. It falls on the cities themselves, on every soul within. According to the story in Genesis 19, only one family is spared, the household of Lot, a man who shows hospitality to strangers on the night the sentence is sealed. 2 angels arrive. He shelters them. The city threatens them, and at dawn it ends. The heavens ignite, fire rains down from above, homes vanish in flame, fields burn, people run, but there's nowhere to go. When it's over, the valley is smoke and silence. Lot's wife, unnamed, is told not to look back. but she does. And for that alone, she's struck down. A pillar of salt where a person once stood. One glance, one moment of hesitation, and she is gone. But Yahweh's judgment doesn't stop at cities. In Genesis 6, it expands to the world. Humanity, he decides, has become too corrupt to continue. So he ends it. He speaks to Noah, a single man he chooses to spare, and tells him to build an ark. No one else is warned. No one else is given the chance to repent. The rain begins, and it doesn't stop. The floodwaters rise until the highest peaks are gone. Everything that breathes, human and animal, is drowned beneath the waves. Children, elders, farmers, kings. Doesn't matter. The earth is wiped clean. And when the waters finally recede, the only ones left are those Yahweh personally selected. Not the innocent, not the repentant. The chosen. Even among the Israelites, his own people, there's no guarantee of safety. In Numbers 16, when a faction led by Korah challenges the authority of Moses and Aaron, Yahweh responds without hesitation. The earth opens up beneath their feet and swallows them whole. Fire follows, then plague. By the time it's over, more than 14,000 lie dead in the dust. This is what it means to be judged by Yahweh. Once he decides, there's no undoing it. Even his name was dangerous, a force to be feared, written in Hebrew as 4 letters. Yod, He, Vav, He. It became known as the Tetragrammaton, Yahweh. These 4 consonants formed the name of Israel's God, but there were no vowels, no fixed pronunciation. That wasn't oversight. That was design. His name wasn't meant to be spoken. It was meant to be revered, or avoided entirely. To say it aloud was to risk invoking the storm, the fire, the judgment. This was dread. A spoken name could summon presence, and this presence was lethal. So they stopped saying it. Instead, they used substitutes. Adonai, meaning Lord, or Hashem, meaning simply the name. Safeguards. Only the high priest could say the true name, and only once a year, in the Holy of Holies, in the innermost sanctuary of the temple. He would enter after ritual purification, surrounded by incense and blood sacrifice, and even then, he would whisper it, just once, face down, alone. If he misspoke, stumbled, or was found unworthy, he might not leave alive. Over time, even this practice faded. The pronunciation was lost, not forgotten, but buried, hidden by the very people who once protected it, because silence, they believed, was safer than certainty. Today, when we say Yahweh, we're speaking a reconstruction. Scholars pieced it together from ancient texts, linguistic roots and early transliterations, but the true pronunciation was never recorded. What we have is an echo, close, perhaps, but never exact. Yahweh had an army, angels called Savaot, the hosts of heaven, a military force. These were executioners, weapons in motion, sent when punishment was deserved, scheduled. The most chilling strike appears to be in the story of Sennacherib, king of Assyria. After years of conquest and desecration, he turned his gaze towards Jerusalem. Confident in his own might, he sent messengers who mocked Yahweh openly, comparing him to the powerless gods of other nations Assyria had crushed. Jerusalem was outnumbered, starving, cornered. No army came to its defense, no sword was drawn. Just nightfall and silence. Then, according to 2 Kings 19, one angel entered the Assyrian camp. Just the sound of nothing. When dawn came, 185,000 soldiers were dead, still in their armor, still in formation, but dead. The siege ended before it began. This wasn't new. In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet is shown a vision of Jerusalem defiled, idol worship in the temple, violence in the streets, the sacred profaned. In response, Yahweh summons 6 angels, each carrying a weapon. A 7th figure clothed in linen is given a different task, to mark the foreheads of those who mourn the city's corruption. Only they are to be spared. The order is direct. Begin at the sanctuary. Start with the elders who serve in the temple, then move outward. Kill without hesitation. Do not show pity. Do not spare the young, the maiden, the child. Blood stains the holy ground first, and spreads from there. It is a cleansing by erasure, a purge disguised as a vision. Then we go back to Egypt, the final plague, the act that broke the empire, the death of the firstborn. Yahweh himself gives the command through Moses. Every Israelite household must take an unblemished lamb, slaughter it at twilight, and smear its blood on the doorsteps and lintel. That night, Yahweh would send his destroyer, a diving assassin moving through the streets, entering each house not marked by blood. It would not matter if the door belonged to a noble or a beggar, an adult or a child. If there was no blood, the firstborn would die, human and animal alike. But in homes where the mark was made, the angel would pass over. It moved with direction, precision. It recognized instructions. And by dawn, every house in Egypt not marked by obedience was marked by mourning. Later, in the wilderness, this same angelic force turned on Yahweh's own people. When the Israelites complained, rebelled, or doubted, angels were sent to punish. In Numbers 22, an angel stands in the road with a drawn sword to block the prophet Balaam. The prophet cannot see him. His donkey can. The animal veers, refuses, collapses, until finally Yahweh opens Balaam's eyes. He sees the angel, sword raised, and realized he was seconds from death. Yahweh didn't send armies of angels when one would do. They were not meant to wage battles, but to end them. These angels didn't speak, they didn't linger. They arrived, completed their task, and left behind silence, corpses, and the undeniable sense that the Holy had intervened, and that it had not come in peace. By the time the prophets speak in exile and despair, something begins to shift. Yahweh still roars from the heavens, but now he also weeps. In Hosea, he is a husband betrayed, aching for the return of his wayward bride. In Isaiah, he promises to bind up the broken-hearted and bring comfort to those who mourn. And in Jeremiah, even as destruction falls on Jerusalem, Yahweh declares, I have loved you with an everlasting love. This is now the voice of mercy, of yearning. And then, in the New Testament, the shift becomes seismic. Yahweh walks the earth, becoming flesh as a man born among livestock. Jesus of Nazareth heals the sick, dines with sinners, speaks peace instead of war. He touches lepers without flinching, forgives the thief, welcomes the outcast. When a woman is dragged before him accused of adultery and sentenced to death by stoning, he kneels, writes in the dust, and tells her to go free. But this isn't a different God. It's the same name, the same power, the same Yahweh who shattered Egypt and now walks the roads of Galilee. That's the tension. The voice that once split mountains now speaks in parables. The hand that once struck nations now breaks bread. This transformation reflected a shift in theology, in human need. After centuries of exile, occupation, and longing, a warrior god was no longer enough. People sought a healer, a teacher, a redeemer. The gospel writers weren't erasing the God of wrath, They were reframing him, recasting the terrifying judge as a father, still capable of wrath, but now choosing patience. And yet the fear never fully disappears. In Revelation, the final book of the Bible, Jesus returns as a king with eyes like flame, a sword in his mouth, and the armies of heaven behind him. Mercy and terror are never truly separated. They are two faces of the same God, one who breaks empires and bends down to wash feet. Yahweh is terrifying because he is power, judgment, death absolute. His words unravel empires. His silence seals fates. He does not negotiate. He does not relent. His presence crushes mountains and his commands erase nations. There is no appeal, no escape, no distance safe enough. When he moves, the world breaks.